Joining us now is Jesse Lava, campaign director for Brave New Foundation. Is here to talk to us about Robert Greenwald's new documentary, Koch Brothers Exposed. Hi, Jesse. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully. And you?
I'm doing well. I'm joined here by William Green and William Mouse Jones and Kent Ruffin as well.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. How are you?
How are you?
Great.
Jesse, the Koch brothers have been in the shadows for years. Tell us who they are and how did they manage to be in a position to wield so much power?
Well, the Koch brothers are two of the wealthiest men in the world. They have $50 billion combined. They are in the oil and gas and paper industry, and they use their wealth to bankroll the right wing in America. And so here's basically what they do. They create an echo chamber of ideas, of false ideas. They give millions of dollars to think tanks like the Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, a bunch of others to come up with pro-corporate policies. Then pundits and media figures regurgitate what those think tanks say, partly on Fox News, but on a lot of networks and a lot of papers, not just that one. And then the Kochs donate to politicians who try to put those right-wing policies into practice. And so is it any wonder that we have government policies that are so favoring the 1% rather than the broad swath of the American people?
Okay, you talking about policy as far as voter suppression, voter ID, the stand your ground laws and those types of things?
Sure. I mean, so voter ID restrictions is one example. They are big funders of a group called ALEC, which has been pushing stand your ground laws of the kind that George Zimmerman was hiding behind. But in addition, they push these voter ID restrictions. And these, of course, disproportionately affect minorities, the young, the poor, the elderly, people who are most likely to vote against a 1% agenda. And the reason that people like the Koch brothers and ALEC would come for voting rights is that makes it easier to take away all our other rights.
Okay. Now tell us a little bit more about the echo chamber of influence that you were talking about a second ago.
Sure. Well, here's a good example. How many times have you guys heard that Social Security is going bankrupt?
Yes,
I mean,
right.
It's just something we constantly hear. But it's a myth. It has a $2.7 trillion surplus. Over the next decade, it's expected to grow to more than $3 trillion. But the think tanks that they fund say all these things like we got to raise the retirement age, we got to cut benefits, it's going bankrupt. And so, media figures, they just hear this stuff, they want a headline, they throw these people right on TV or give them a quote in the newspaper, and soon everyone in America thinks it's true. So what do we have? We have a whole bunch of politicians trying to, quote-unquote, save Social Security by cutting it. And that's a good example.
Okay. And you also talk about various think tanks. Is the Americans for Prosperity one of those?
Americans for Prosperity is a grassroots group, but I think it's probably better described as AstroTurf,
okay,
in the sense that it is founded by these billionaires, but they give the impression of a broad grassroots kind of uprising whenever they do things. And they've been fighting President Obama's health care law. They fight worker rights. In Wisconsin, Governor Scott Walker had a very famous effort to strip public employees of their collective bargaining rights, and Americans for Prosperity was supporting him every step of the way. And so that's the kind of thing that Americans for Prosperity does. And the Kochs founded that group and continue to finance it.
And how many other groups do the Koch brothers actually have besides that one?
Oh, man. I mean, they just dozens. I mean, I had mentioned the Cato Institute and Heritage Foundation. There's also something called the Mercatus Center. The list just goes on and on and on. And their reach really goes into a lot of things. So you had mentioned Americans for Prosperity. Mm-hmm. One thing that they did in Wake County, North Carolina, was an effort to resegregate public schools. There was actually a very successful model of integrated schools in Wake County. But there were a lot of people there who said, oh, we need to do away with that, and they used, code words from the George Wallace era, like forced busing
mm-hmm.
and neighborhood schools. And Americans for Prosperity supported these efforts to resegregate the schools. And actually, there was an election there of school board members, and the bad guys won. And for a while, the schools started getting resegregated. But then there was a giant backlash when people saw what was going on. In the very next election, the bad guys were kicked out of the school board, and now integration is coming back into being. So it is a sign that no matter how insidious and dangerous the Koch brothers' efforts are, people can fight back.
Now, you talk about the bad guys. The Koch brothers had actually positioned various, I guess, candidates to take office in North Carolina so that they'd be able to control the vote for what was going on with regards to the education, the resegregation of the education there, correct?
Here's what the Koch brothers do. They fund groups that then fund the other groups doing this stuff. And so if anything happens that's really controversial, like they say, oh, we didn't have anything to do with resegregation, we just founded and finance Americans for Prosperity, and they're the ones pushing for it. So I don't want to say that technically the Koch brothers out of their own pockets gave to the candidates in North Carolina, but they sure gave a lot of money to the group that was supporting the efforts of resegregation that those candidates were pushing for.
Okay, and we're seeing similar things happening in Wisconsin as well with the governor there, the recall Scott Walker.
Exactly. Yeah, well, in Wisconsin there was a huge protest where we thought this might be a big moment for the labor movement to demonstrate just how much it is under siege. And to try to regain some momentum, but of course the people trying to stop that momentum dead in its tracks were Americans for Prosperity, and so their influence goes into a wide variety of areas: worker rights, civil rights, voter rights. I mean, you name it.
Well, I know right now we're focusing on the Koch brothers, but is there another organization or any other resource out there that is fighting against his agenda from a liberal standpoint? I mean, I just want to be fair.
Oh, sure. And for our film, which you can find at KochBrothersExposed.com, there's a list of our partner organizations, and they have been trying to get the word out about our film, and there's a bunch of wonderful organizations doing work on that. There's People for the American Way. There's Democracy for America. One group that we feature in the film is the NAACP. They were leading the efforts to fight resegregation in North Carolina. So if you see the film, and if you go to the website, you'll find a lot of resources there to help.
Now tell us about the 1% campaign. Who are the 1%?
Who are the 1%? Yeah. Well, what we wanted to do with that campaign was demonstrate exactly how our democracy is being taken from us. We started this at the height of the Occupy movement, and at that time there was this kind of surge of angst about how elites were having an outsized influence on American politics. But the thing is, people had a vague sense of that, but didn't know the exact mechanism by which their democracy was being taken from them. They couldn't name names. So what we had was a contest, or we had a vote rather, where we put up a whole bunch of nominees of people in the 1% who were doing a lot to hijack our democracy and have an outsized influence on our politics, and we gave descriptions of them and had people vote. And then we made videos about the top vote getters. So one of them, for instance, was Rob Walton, who's the chairman of Wal Mart, and their average sales associate at Wal Mart gets paid $8.81 an hour. That is not a living wage.
Wow.
Another person was Jamie Dimon, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, a bank that is very famous for so-called robo signing of foreclosures, kicking people out of their home without actually having proper documentation to do that. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to give the specifics.
Okay.
Well, look, Jesse, what you're talking about, the Koch brothers, is what rich people in this country have been doing for years. Any business that's a smart business would like to have legislature that would slide things that will help raise their profitability.
Right.
Just here recently, it came out during the Edwards case, the Mellon heiress. She donated over $750,000, and she channeled the money through her interior decorator and then through this assistant or this flunky for John Edwards, and kept that money on the side, knowing full well that money was not going toward the case. I mean, the campaign itself. It's this country has been, well, every country, but this country is driven on the fact that rich do what they can to stay in power, to make more money, and to do things. But I don't to vilify just the Kochs. The Kochs are just indicative of, to me, every major corporation in this nation.
I think you're right that the Kochs reflect a broader problem. That it's not just that these two villainous guys, emerged from the swamps or something, and all of a sudden all havoc broke loose. I do think they reflect a broader problem. And there are a lot of policies that we could put in place to try to ensure that we have a healthier democracy where everybody has a say, and the top 1%, or in their case, the top 1%, can't have such a disproportionate influence. So in that respect, I absolutely agree with you. But the key point is that democracy should mean that everyone has influence over how they're governed. Power isn't just supposed to be in a few people's hands, and we're not just supposed to, pull a lever every couple years and call that democracy. And the reason we're calling out the Kochs is that if Americans understand how they are rigging the game, then they are better equipped to act to take their own democracy back.
Right, I agree. I definitely
But I think
agree.
Americans know the game is rigged.
No, we don't. We don't know who's being rigged by. That's the question. That's what's need to be exposed. Who's being rigged by?
It doesn't matter to know who is rigged by.
Oh, yes, it does. It does.
You can't do anything
does.
about it.
Yes, you can. And if you look at the documentary, the people in North Carolina, they made a difference. They did something about it. They did. They did.
Well, they couldn't see. That was such a small part.
And the same thing in Wisconsin. They did something about it, and that's what we all have to do: get involved and do something about it.
Yeah, they did do something about it. They didn't vote. They put Scott Walker in place. They put the current governor in Florida in place. We get apathetic. We go to sleep because the most important thing to us is having a job and providing for our children and living. All this other stuff is going on behind the scenes. We know what's going on behind the scenes.
That's why I'm glad Robert Greenwald is bringing it to the forefront. We have to agree to disagree. But anyway, Jesse, tell our listeners about the mission and vision of Brave New Foundation, please.
Sure. Well, we believe in social justice. We believe in a more equal society where everyone has opportunity. And so we make videos and other kinds of media that reveal the truth about how our society is operating, and also importantly, how it could work. What are some better alternatives? So we have a lot of video campaigns that talk about social justice. For instance, we have one called War Costs, which talks about how over-militarized our society has become, how much we spend on war, which hurts not only those overseas, but also in our own country with busting budgets and people who, veterans who come home and aren't being taken care of, that sort of thing. We have another campaign called Cuéntame, which intends to engage young Latinos in politics. So our effort is to get as many people participating as possible, as many people as possible taking control over their own lives through their democracy, and that's what we promote with our videos.
Well, Jesse, how can our listeners get a copy of the DVD and can support Brave New Foundation?
Sure. Go to KochBrothersExposed.com, and there you can find information about the DVD. You can find facts about the Koch brothers, and you can also find out how to host a screening. It is really important that we get the word out.
Okay.
And when people say that, to their own friends and family, come to my house and watch a screening, come to my church and watch a screening, that has a lot of credibility and a lot of power.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's good to know, because I think I'd be interested in doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Also, too, I know you contribute on Huffington Post. Tell us how we can follow you.
How you can follow me? Well, I would suggest following Robert Greenwald on Twitter, and because he is my boss here at Brave New Foundation.
Okay.
And you can also do the same at Huffington Post. You can just go to HuffingtonPost.com/Robert-Greenwald, and all his stuff is right there.
Okay. Jesse Lava, thank you so very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. I hope to have you come back again.
Hey, thank you very much.
Have a good one now. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.